The slap cracked through the marble hall like a gunshot. Amara staggered, her bucket tipping as red drops splattered the spotless white floor. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply lowered her eyes. Because everyone knew what happened to people who reacted. Whispers rippled through the servants. Not shock. Fear. Because the woman standing over her wasn't just cruel. She was So-Hee Kang, the woman gang leaders bowed to. The feared fiancé of the Korean underworld's most dangerous man. So you think you belong here now? So, he sneered, grabbing Amara's chin and forcing her head up. You people forget yourselves so easily. Then the air changed. Footsteps echoed behind them, slow, deliberate, final. The hall fell silent as Seo Joon Kang stopped a few feet away. The man whose name closed businesses, erased families, and started wars with a single call. His gaze didn't go to his fiancée. It went to Amara's trembling hands. To the blood on her cheek. So, Seo Joon said calmly, dangerously, "Who touched you?" Fear begged it.Amara to lie. Her conscience didn't let her. The ring hit the floor before anyone could breathe. Get out, he said. Guards moved. So, he froze. And as Amara collapsed, she realized the truth was more terrifying than the slap. She hadn't been punished. She'd been chosen. Subscribe to Love and Loyalties before the truth changes everything. Amara was summoned just after midnight. Not by a servant. Not by a messenger. By two silent men in black suits who did not knock. Only opened the door and waited. Every step through the mansion felt like a countdown. The halls were quieter at night, the kind of quiet that pressed against the ears, heavy with secrets. She could still feel the sting on her cheek, though the blood had long been cleaned away. No one had spoken to her since the incident. No comfort. No threats. That was worse. The doors to Seo Joon Kang's private wing opened with a soft mechanical hiss. Amara stopped just inside the threshold. The room was vast and dimly lit, all glass and steel, overlooking Seoul's glittering skyline. Power lived here. Not loud power, controlled power. The kind that didn't need to announce itself. Seo Joon stood by the window, his back to her, jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up. He looked less like a monster from whispered stories and more like a man carved out of discipline and restraint. Close the door, he said without turning. Her hands shook as she obeyed. For a long moment, he said nothing. He simply watched the city, as if deciding which part of it deserved to survive the night. Amara waited, heart pounding, bracing herself for punishment. Dismissal. Deportation. Something worse. Instead, he asked quietly, "Why didn't you lie?" The question caught her off guard. "I." Her voice cracked. She swallowed. "Because you asked." He turned then, slowly, eyes sharp and unreadable. "Everyone lies to me," he said. "Especially when they're afraid." Amara lowered her gaze. "I was afraid." "Then why tell the truth?" "Because I didn't want to lose myself," she thought. "Because my mother didn't raise me to survive by becoming empty." She didn't say any of that. "I didn't think the truth would matter," she said softly. But it was still the truth. Something flickered across his face. Brief, dangerous, almost human. "You know what you caused today," Seo Joon said. "Engagements like that don't end quietly." Amara nodded. "I didn't ask you to defend me." "No," he agreed. "You didn't." Silence stretched again, thick and suffocating. Then he walked toward her. Not fast. Not threatening. But every step reminded her how small she was in this world. He stopped an arm's length away. She could feel the weight at him, the gravity of a man whose decisions reshaped lives. "Do you know why he felt entitled to touch you?" he asked. Because she could, Amara thought. Because no one ever stopped her. Seo Joon continued. "Power unchallenged becomes cruelty." Amara dared to look up. Their eyes met, and for the first time, she didn't see rage. She saw conflict. "You don't belong in that household anymore," he said. Relief surged through her. Brief, fragile, until he added, "But you don't leave either." Her breath caught. "Sir." "You will stay here," he said calmly. "In my wing. As my personal attendant." Her mind reeled. I don't understand. You will, he replied. So-Hee has enemies. Now you do too. Removing you would be seen as weakness. Protecting you openly would provoke war. Amara's chest tightened. So this is about strategy. Yes, he said immediately. Then, after a pause, and control. At least he was honest. What happens if I refuse? She asked, though every part of her already knew the answer. Seo Joon studied her for a long moment, as if weighing not her usefulness, but her spine. You leave Sil tonight, he said. No reference, no protection. No second chances. Her mother's face flashed in her mind. The hospital bills. The fragile hope she'd carried across continents. And if I accept? Amara whispered. You live under my roof, he said. You follow my rules. You speak when spoken to. You observe everything. And repeat nothing. She nodded slowly. And if your fiancé objects? His jaw tightened. She no longer has the authority to touch what is mine. The words struck her harder than any slap. I'm not something to own, Amara said quietly. The room went still. For a heartbeat, she thought she'd gone too far. Then Seo Joon did something unexpected. He smiled. Not warmly, not cruelly, but with sharp interest. That, he said, is exactly why you'll survive here. He turned away, signaling the conversation was over. You'll be given a room. Security will be informed. This decision is not a favor. Amara stood frozen, the weight of it all pressing down on her chest. At the door, she hesitated. Sir? Yes. Why me? He didn't turn around when he answered. Because you reminded me of what fear looks like, he said. And what it doesn't. Her hand rested on the door handle, heart racing, knowing that whatever waited on the other side would change her life forever. Behind her, Seo Joon's voice followed. Calm, absolute, inescapable. Say yes, he said. Or leave Sil tonight. Amara learned quickly that Seo Joon Kang's world did not announce its violence. It whispered it. Her days began before dawn and ended long after midnight. She moved through glass corridors and shadowed rooms, serving tea to men who never said please, collecting documents she was never meant to read, standing silently behind Seo Joon during meetings where lives were negotiated in low voices. She was invisible by design. That was the first test. Stand there, Seo Joon told her one morning, nodding to the wall behind his chair as a meeting began. Do not react. Do not speak. The men seated around the table eyed her curiously. A black woman. A maid. In the inner sanctum, they spoke of territory disputes, of shipments intercepted, of punishment that needed to be delivered as an example. Amara kept her gaze lowered, her face calm, even when her stomach twisted at the casual cruelty in their words. She did not flinch. Seo Joon noticed. The second test came days later. A young man was dragged into the hall outside Seo Joon's office, bloodied, pleading in rapid Korean. Amara didn't understand every word, but she understood fear. She understood mercy being begged for. Take her away, one of the guards said, gesturing toward Amara. Seo Joon raised a hand. No, she stays. Amara's heart pounded as the man was forced to kneel. She waited for Seo Joon to order punishment. Instead, he asked questions, quiet ones, precise ones. When the truth surfaced, that the man had stolen to pay for his sister's surgery, Seo Joon's jaw tightened. Return the money, he said finally, and leave Seoul. The guards hesitated. That wasn't the usual outcome. Now, Seo Joon snapped. As the man was dragged away, alive, Seo Joon turned to Amara. You disapprove. It wasn't a question. She hesitated. I don't know your rules, sir. But you have your own. He said. Yes. And you won't trade them for safety. No. Something passed between them then. Respect, perhaps. Or recognition. That night, as Amara set his dinner tray down, she noticed a faint cut on his knuckles. You're hurt, she said softly before she could stop herself. Seo Joon looked at her, surprised. Not by the observation, but by the concern. It's nothing. Nothing still bleeds, she replied. He watched her for a long moment, then nodded toward the first aid kit on the counter. Do it. Her hands trembled as she cleaned the wound, their proximity charged with something unspoken. He was still. Trusting, dangerous. "You're not afraid of me," he said quietly. "I am," she admitted. "But fear doesn't mean silence." His lips curved slightly. "That will get you killed here." "Then perhaps this place needs to change," she said without thinking. The air shifted. For a heartbeat, she thought she'd crossed an invisible line. Instead, Seo Joon laughed softly. "Once. Careful, Amara," he said. "You're starting to sound like someone who believes she matters." "I do," she replied. "Even here." From the shadows, So-Hee Kang watched everything. She saw the way Seo Joon's gaze followed Amara longer than necessary. The way meetings ended differently now. Quieter, less bloodshed. She saw how the staff adjusted instinctively, sensing a shift in gravity. Obsession curled in her chest. This was not about a maid. This was about influence. So, he began digging. It didn't take long to find the name. Noi, years ago. A financial deal gone wrong. A woman who had refused to sign away land to Seo Joon's father. Had delayed an operation, embarrassed the family, cost them millions. The woman had vanished shortly after. So, he smiled slowly. The final test came without warning. Seo Joon handed Amara a document one evening. "Translate this," he said. She scanned the page and froze. It was an order. Legal language disguising something vile. Evictions. Forced removals. Families displaced overnight. "I can't," she said quietly. Seo Joon's eyes sharpened. "You can." "I won't." Silence stretched between them, taut as wire. "You know what refusing me means," he said. "Wes. And you still choose this." "I choose not to be complicit," Amara replied, voice steady despite the fear roaring in her chest. "If that costs me this position, then I accept it." Seo Joon stared at her for a long time. Then he tore the document in half. "You surprise me?" he said. Again. Later that night, as Amara walked back to her room, he stepped out of the shadows, blocking her path. Her smile was slow, calculated, poisonous. "So tell me," she said softly, eyes glittering. "Do you know why he really saved you?" Amara's stomach dropped. Because suddenly, she wasn't sure the past had finished with her yet. The message arrived just before dawn. It wasn't a threat. Not directly. It was worse. A photograph lit up Amara's phone screen. Her mother lying in a hospital bed, eyes closed, machines humming softly beside her. Beneath it, a single line of text appeared. "You don't belong where you're standing." Amara's hands went cold. She didn't need to ask who sent it. By the time she reached the garden courtyard, So-Hee Kang was already there, dressed in white, serene as a queen surveying conquered land. "You should thank me." He said lightly. "I could have ended this faster." Amara's voice shook despite her effort to steady it. "What do you want?" He smiled. "Clarity." She began to speak as if reciting history, her tone elegant, precise. Years ago, Amara's mother had refused to sell land to Seo Joon's father. The delay had cost lives. Deals had fallen apart. Power had shifted. And vengeance, delayed, had always been promised. "You weren't saved?" He said softly. "You were recognized." Amara staggered back as the truth settled in her bones. "You're his weakness." He continued. "And men like Seo Joon don't protect weaknesses. They study them." The words lodged deep, poisonous and convincing. Before Amara could respond, alarms tore through the estate. Gunfire erupted, men shouted, glass shattered. Inside, Seo Joon stood frozen as reports flooded in. Betrayal from within his council. A coordinated attack led by those who believed his mercy had made him weak. "Find Amara," he ordered, voice tight. But Amara was already gone. She packed nothing. Took nothing. Only her dignity and her pain. She left behind a note, hands shaking as she wrote. "I won't be the reason you lose everything." As flames licked the estate gates and bullets tore through the night, Seo Joon read her words, and understood too late what he had failed to say. The gates burned. Gunshots echoed, and the woman who had changed everything disappeared into the dark. The coup did not last the night. By dawn, Seoul whispered a new truth. Seo Joon Kang had survived. The traitors in his council were dragged into the open one by one. Meetings once held in silence now echoed with accusation and confession. Men who had hidden behind tradition and bloodline were exposed for what they were. Cowards afraid of change. Seo Joon stood at the center of it all, blood on his cuffs, voice steady. "Mercy is not weakness," he said to the council. "It is control." One by one, alliances collapsed. Those who had ordered the attack were exiled or arrested, stripped of power. Not executed. Not erased. That alone sent shockwaves through the underworld. Then came So-Hee Kang. She arrived dressed in black, fury barely contained, convinced she could still bend him. "You chose a servant over your future," she spat. Seo Joon didn't raise his voice. He didn't insult her. He reached into his pocket and placed the engagement contract on the table. Torn, stamped, finished. "This ends now," he said, publicly. Gasps rippled through the room. "This empire will no longer be ruled by fear." Seo Joon continued. "Anyone who cannot accept that may leave." So, he laughed, sharp, broken. "You think she'll come back after what you put her through?" Seo Joon's jaw tightened. "That is my burden." Finding Amara took days. She had gone where she could disappear. Back to the outskirts, working nights, sending money home, rebuilding walls around her heart. When Seo Joon finally found her, he didn't arrive with guards or threats. He arrived alone. He knelt in the rain, right there on the cracked pavement outside her building, ignoring the stares, the whispers, the cameras already lifting. "I failed you," he said, voice raw. "Not because I protected you, but because I didn't choose you out loud." Amara's hands shook as she stared down at him. "I won't ask you to return as mine," he continued. "I'm asking you to stand beside me. Only if you want to." Rain soaked through his suit, through his pride. "I'm changing everything," he said. "The rules, the legacy, the blood." He looked up at her then, eyes unguarded for the first time. "Will you stay?" he asked softly. "Even if I change everything?" Months later, the city no longer whispered Seo Joon Kang's name with fear. It spoke it with caution. With respect. The empire still existed, but it had changed its shape. The violence was quieter now, deliberate, restrained. Exploitation routes were shut down. Protection replaced intimidation. Men who once ruled through blood learned quickly that mercy, when enforced by strength, was far more terrifying than cruelty ever was. Seo Joon ruled differently. Not from the shadows, but with accountability. Amara watched it all from a distance she chose. She no longer lived behind guarded gates or glass walls. Her mornings were simple now. Sunlight through curtains, phone calls to Nigeria filled with laughter instead of hospital beeps. Her mother walked again. Slowly. Carefully live. That alone felt like a miracle. Seo Joon never forced his way into her peace. He showed up quietly. Listened more than he spoke. Learned. When they walked together, there were no titles. No guards hovering too close. Just a man relearning himself. And a woman who refused to disappear for love. They were equals. One evening, standing on a quiet rooftop overlooking Seoul, Seo Joon took her hand, not to claim her, but to ask. "No rings," he said softly. "No cages. No expectations you didn't choose." Amara smiled, eyes shining, not with submission, but certainty. "I don't want a throne," she said. "I want honesty." "You have it?" he replied. "For the rest of my life." She wasn't a queen by name. She was something far more dangerous. A woman who changed a kingdom by refusing to lose herself. And Seo Joon Kang, the man once feared by an entire underworld, had finally learned the truth power never taught him. Love given freely is stronger than loyalty forced. As the city lights flickered below them, their future didn't roar. It breathed. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to Love and Loyalties and comment which couple you want next.